Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our fleet arrangements launch on this Tuesday, the 22nd of December, 2025, rolling into Christmas at quite a swift pace. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. I'd like to start by making some introductions. And then we're going to do some housekeeping before we kick off with our slides this afternoon. My name is Emma Peters. I am the Head of Engagement for Local Buy. Also featured on this particular slide is our category manager and, as Isabel described Shane, the fleet guru, Shane Grimstone. Good afternoon, Shane.
Good afternoon.
And we're also joined by two other Local Buy colleagues today, the Manager of Procurement, Catherine Daly.
Hello, everybody.
And Isabel, who is hiding her face, who is looking after the lobby, and Isabel is our category specialist. Now, a little bit of housekeeping before we kick off our content today. If you have any questions, because we have so many people joining us for the webinar today, we do have cameras and microphones switched off. However, if you do have a question, please do let us know by posting it in the Q&A portal, which is available in your top toolbar on Teams. If you press Q&A, you will be able to type a question and we will do a live Q&A at the end of the session. First of all, we're going to cover some context about who Local Buy is and where we fit into local government procurement. So Local Buy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the LGAQ, the Local Government Association of Queensland. We were created all the way back in 2001 to assist councils streamline procurement. That means Local Buy will be turning 25 years of age next year. We are a profit for purpose organisation, and that means any profit that we make over and above our operating costs is returned to our owner, the LGAQ, who use those funds to provide awesome member services for all 77 Queensland member councils. We also work really closely with the Local Government Association of the Northern Territory to provide streamlined procurement for Northern Territory buyers. Now, you didn't think you were going to have a little lecture on the local government regulation this afternoon, and I know quite a few of the people in the room, so I'm not going to labour over these particular slides, as I know some of you have heard them 1,000 times before. But if there is someone in the room that doesn't understand how Local Buy fits into local government procurement, you're going to learn why and how over the next couple of slides. So looking at the Queensland default procurement rules, if councils are entering into what the legislation considers to be a medium-sized contract, that's between 15,000 and 200,000, you must obtain 3 written quotes. If you're entering into a large size contractual arrangement over $200,000, then you must perform a full and open market tender. Noting that these thresholds are accumulative for the life of a contract or a financial year with a supplier for similar goods or services. So council can't split up those orders to make them underneath that tender threshold. They are accumulative. A very quick glimpse at the Northern Territory thresholds, which are similar but slightly lower than those here in Queensland. The tendering threshold within the Northern Territory kicks in at $150,000 as opposed to $200,000 excluding GST in Queensland. If anyone has been involved with tendering, you will understand that it is a long and arduous process, not just for you to put together the tender process, but also for the suppliers to respond to. There's the preparation of the tender documents and contracts that you're going to use to engage suppliers. You can't buy anything quickly because those tenders have to be open here in Queensland for a full 21 days. There could be a long evaluation process if you get lots and lots of responses to those tenders, and there could be a risk that the preferred tenderer comes from outside your local government area. We've estimated that the cost of tendering is around $20,000 per tender for council to put together, and it can be up to $5,000 for suppliers to respond to. So where does local buy come into that? Well, local buy has an exception in Queensland written into the local government regulation, and an exemption in the Northern Territory that says councils and other purchasers can purchase a broad range of goods and services, even if they're going over that tender threshold, without having to perform tenders if they are engaging suppliers through a local buy pre-qualified supplier arrangement, of which local buy has over 50 pre-qualified supplier arrangements with, and I can give you an exact number, 4,889 pre-qualified suppliers across a broad range of goods and services. Whilst we were created in 2001 to assist councils in Queensland streamline procurement, some other entities have also recognised that we've got over 50 awesome pre-qualified supplier arrangements, and they've started to utilise local buy for their procurement too, which is excellent for our suppliers who are enabled to engage with other entities outside of local government, and they include Queensland state and federal government departments, government-owned corporations. Lots of water authorities and port authorities utilise local buy for procurement. We are open for charities and not-for-profits to use local buy to procure, and lots of educational establishments, schools and unis are already utilising local buy as well. Some quick statistics for you before I pass across to my esteemed colleague Shane, who's going to take us into a deep dive into the new fleet arrangements and also his portfolio of fleet arrangements. So as you can see on this slide here, we were delighted that in financial year 2024 to 2025, over $1 billion was procured through local buy pre-qualified supplier arrangements. 61% of all of that procurement went through vendor panel, our online procurement technology system. And as I said before, there are 4,889 pre-qualified suppliers, and 274 different buyer organisations used local buy last financial year. As you can see, we have 77 councils in Queensland. There are 17 in the Northern Territory. So that non-local government sector is really, really growing. That's enough about the local buy fundamentals. But if you do want to find out a little bit more, or even do some vendor panel training, we have monthly vendor panel and local buy training, which is performed just like this online in a webinar, and we will be more than happy for you to register to attend our next training. Enough from me, it's over to Shane, and don't forget, before I pass across to Shane, if you do have any questions, if something pops into your head whilst Shane is talking, please post it in the Q&A portal at the top toolbar on Teams. Shane, it's over to you.
Thank you, Emma, and thank you for the esteemed comment, because already I've been flooded with texts. I don't know if it's congratulating, but certainly big question marks around that. Actually, it was just one, and you know who it is, Michael. So we're going to look at two contracts today. Both are new, and they both are essentially a refresh of some existing arrangements. So the first one we're going to look at is the heavy and light plant machinery. Now, what we did with this is bring the old NPN arrangement, heavy plant machinery equipment, and the tractor mower and general power equipment into one. Now, those of you who've been around as long as I have realise that we're revisiting history. They were once together and then we separated them, and now they're together again. It's like one of those marriages. and hopefully this time it works better for everybody. So I've listed the categories there, and they're fairly straightforward, but one of the things we looked at, and in discussion between both council buyers and the industry suppliers, was making sure that we had categories covered. So we've added a few new things, and some of you might go, oh yeah, don't care. But on the other hand, this arrangement's going to be running potentially up to 15 years. So keeping the categories broad and expandable over the next, that time period is pretty important. So the first one will be concrete equipment. Now, I'd love to tell you that we've filled that category up with multiple suppliers, but nobody tendered. But we put it in. We do have some suppliers in the industry out there. We just haven't been able to attract them in this initial round of tendering.
Shane, I have a question, please. Can you expand a little bit further about what you mean exactly by concrete equipment, please? You mean the concrete trucks with the rolly body?
So this will be essentially stationary equipment. So concrete batching plants, and the appropriate machinery that fits around that. Now, not something that gets bought very often in the best case, but from time to time it's required. There are obviously a few people in the industry out there that supply it. The one that pushed most for it, forgot to do their tender. But
they will have an opportunity to come back on when we reopen.
We will capture them in the new year for sure.
Thanks, Shane.
So the next two are one after the other. So I've separated electric heavy plant and electric light plant. Now, heavy plant, it's fairly light on, so at the moment with suppliers, but we probably have seen some of the companies starting to produce electric yellow plant machinery. So excavator seems to be the main one at this point. Early days, but once again, as I said before, we need this to be broad enough for the future. Electric light plant is probably much more popular. So we're talking about electric tractors, electric mowers, ride-on mowers, all the general purpose, electric chainsaws, brush cutters, blowers. I've separated it once again. I see it as a growing segment in the market that we need to ensure. And when you're looking to buy electric equipment, I think it's important to be able to find it easy and not just go, I'm looking for a mower who does electric mowers, which is why I've singled them out there. The other one that's new as a category is leasing options. So leasing is obviously another way of financing. Typically, when councils are buying, they are buying and paying cash, so to speak. But with the cost of machinery increasing, the leasing option is starting to become a much needed requirement. So these are not for leasing companies. These are for the option on how you finance. So some of these suppliers have their own internal financing and can be done through a leasing. So that was fairly important that we included that. The other one is servicing and maintenance agreements as well, and that almost goes together with the last category of whole of range parts and servicing. So typically when you buy equipment, you always need some sort of parts and servicing done. So we've included that. So what this means is if you're buying a brand X piece of equipment, previously all your spare parts you were buying either directly from them, but you weren't covered under any arrangement. And most councils are spending hundreds of thousands, if not, some seven-figure numbers with larger councils on parts. And once you add in your servicing, it becomes, easily exceeds that $200,000. So you'll be able to utilise this contract, buy your spare parts, use that contract number, LB345, and purchase it. There is no price schedule attached for parts or servicing in this arrangement. That'll be a negotiated position between you as the buyer and the supplier that you're utilising.
Shane, that's really good to see that it's actually included in there as a category. As you know, we've had queries from council, can I buy OEM spares from the manufacturer? And that's awesome to see that that's been included as a category for both parts and servicing moving forward.
Yeah, that's, and typically most people will buy OEM spare parts, particularly under warranty, but we still have the option of our spare parts arrangement for non-OEM suppliers. So, if you're buying from, a Repco or a Burson's type organisation, or your local machinery dealer who's not aligned as an OEM, you can utilise those through the spare parts arrangement. So hopefully, I don't see any Q&As on that. So that means you either fully understand or are going to phone me up tomorrow. Either way, I don't mind, but we might jump up to the other new contract, which is Fleet Management Solutions. So it replaced the Fleet Management Services, which doesn't sound like much difference. And it was probably a bit of a thought bubble that we're actually providing solutions, and this is what councils need. Yes, there are services in there, and the categories are similar, but also additional. So fleet consultancy services is back there. That's a fairly utilised category when you want to do some review of your operations. It might be that you just want to make sure that you're doing the right thing. You want a new direction. You might want to know about the next category. What do I do with my fleet management information systems and or my in-vehicle monitoring systems? So those often work together, and a lot of companies are sitting in both those categories. So they're fairly self-explanatory. We've brought back auction and vehicle disposal and remarketing services. So we've got the major players in again on this. So just off the top of my head, we've got the Manheims, we've got the Pickles, we've got Slattery's, possibly by default with Slattery's, they now own Grows Online. That we have to confirm with them how that's going to be set up for them internally. But the two new categories in there, so MAS, which is Mobility as a Service. What I've done is group together the rental of vehicles and the leasing of vehicles that were previously standalone categories, and I've combined them with subscription services, which is a new approach, particularly for motor vehicles, but it can also be for trucks. And the suppliers in there are probably quite broad, but where you might need a vehicle for a short-term project, maybe a consultant's coming in and you've agreed to provide them with, a commercial vehicle for a period of time, subscription works really well. Sort of, that 3, 6, 9 month window. It's too long to rent it and it's too short to lease it. So, and at the end of that period, you hand the vehicle back, here's the keys, and it's all taken care of. So it's not on your books, it's really handy, that one. The final category is very new. So digitised maintenance, repairs and servicing. So right at this point on the calendar, the only supplier we have, which is a company called Auto Guru, hasn't opened it to local governments, but they will be in early 2026. I don't have a date on that, but I'll just give you a bit of an idea from some demos that I've seen of how it works. So many of you in the fleet management side would understand that it can be quite frustrating, particularly where you've got your white fleet and you're attempting to get those vehicles into a service provider. to get the vehicle serviced for its annual or whatever the kilometre service is. What you're doing with these digitised services is putting it out to what they call an AI agent. So AutoGuru has an AI agent, and when you push it across to them, the AI agent will phone the user of that vehicle. They will lock in a time, a place, a location for whatever the service is required, and then all that information is correlated and sent back to the fleet manager. So it takes a lot of that time and concern. It doesn't guarantee that that person will turn up for the service, but it does do all that booking, and all the chargeback is done through the AI agent. So, and I've listened to it a couple of times in a couple of different presentations, and I tell you, apart from the time it takes to respond, where they don't jump in immediately, the AI agent pauses before it responds, you wouldn't pick that it was an AI. It just sounds like a very efficient service officer, of which they don't actually occur too often, particularly in car dealerships. They tend to be all over the place. So this, I think this is a tool that's going to get utilised much more over the next 5+ years across fleet. So there we go. I just thought I'd give you a quick run over of what categories sit in my fleet portfolio at the moment. And many of you will be aware of these, but I just thought I'd run through. So fuels is a big one, bulk fuel, and there are a number of suppliers across the state, and there's more that we try to capture each time. For those of you who have on-site bulk fuel storage, we have suppliers of storage tanks and the metering equipment and the software that fits on that, so that you can monitor what vehicles and assets are using the fuel and link it back to your own internal finance systems. Fleet charge cards, pretty straightforward. The old fuel card, it does have provision, and I think we're going to see over the next 6 months a couple of suppliers offering EV charging cards, because that's been missing. Getting a universal charge card is a bit tricky because all the different suppliers of EV charging are operating their own networks. So getting something that works across the different brands is a bit tricky, but it'll make your job much easier to be able to monitor that. We've just gone through fleet management solutions and heavy and light plant machinery. Motor vehicles. So motor vehicles have been around for quite some time, and the current version is coming up to nearly 3 years of age. Making sure that we've got the right dealers in the right areas. So some of you utilise our motor vehicle contract. It does include, as it says in the name, e-mobility. So that includes not just your conventional petrol and diesel vehicles, but also electric vehicles. It includes hydrogen vehicles, which are not really on the radar at this point in time. And it includes things like scooters, motorbikes, all sorts of small things like golf carts, e-tuk-tuks, and we sort of think, who would have those? But there are little places for those, and we're just starting to see that people are utilising some of that smaller use of vehicles there. Oil and lubricants. Current version is the oldest living contract in local buy, so we're coming up to almost 25 years, and I'm pleased to say, not that I care what oil goes into my car because somebody else does that, but Castrol are our original supplier, and they're still there all these years later. So they'll probably get some sort of pat on the back when we have our conference next year about longevity. Plant and equipment dry hire. we've got a lot of people on there, and a lot of them are local suppliers that have been directed to us through yourselves. Usage of that obviously depends upon who's on the contract and who's required by council at different times. And individuals within councils will have preferences to certain suppliers. It doesn't include wet hire. It won't include wet hire. Wet hire, as any of you have got to manage it, no, it's a completely different beast, and maybe one that we probably don't want to get involved with as much as you might want us to. It's only because it's a nightmare for you, and it would be even a bigger nightmare for us in the way the current industry is structured. As I mentioned earlier, spare parts. So spare parts here is essentially the non-OEM suppliers. So, the Bursons, the Rapcos, those type organisations, your local car dealer, your local truck dealer, various machinery dealers, independent across the state, for when you're buying parts. And sometimes it might be just accessories that, it could be blades, or it could be buckets, or anything that's not coming out of the OEM. And then the big one, trucks, buses, specialised trucks, truck bodies, trailers, etc., etc., etc. So if it's related to a truck, whether it's on the back of a truck, it's being towed by a truck, whether it's got water in, or it's got a service body, or it's just a tray, or it's picking up your garbage, sweeping your streets, vacuuming up your trenches, that's the contract. We have over 60 different suppliers across. It's a national arrangement, and it's by far the biggest and strongest and most utilised contract that we have. I would like to say that we've exhausted all the OEM truck suppliers, but I know there's a couple there that we're still trying to encourage to get on. But where the big growth in that will be is around truck body and trailer suppliers. So everyone wants to deal local, and that's really important from a council perspective. So we're slowly filling the gaps in the map, so to speak, with those suppliers. Anybody's got somebody that they can't find on our arrangement and they want, so, I must have ABC truck bodies, let us know, and then between myself and Emma and her team, we reach out to them, talk to them. If we need your assistance, we'll call on you to say, hey, can you give them a prod, and encourage them to get on and tender. Tyres, you've all got tyres, so you've got tyre problems. Most councils have got anywhere between 2 and about 200 tyre suppliers in an area. Not all of them can do what you want. Some of them are very retail focused. Some of them might be focused towards performance vehicles. That's a nice name for the guys that do burnouts on Friday and Saturday nights. But you want guys that can be able to change your tyres on your trucks. They can come out to your depot, change machinery tyres, and obviously, your white fleet. So we've got a fairly broad range. We've got groups like the Tyre Power Group. We've got the Bob Jane Group. We have the Bridgestone Group. And then we've got a number of independents in there, and we've got a number of wholesalers. So only last week we were in Mackay and Whitsunday, and there are a couple more tyre people who are going to put their hand up and tender next time around. And then I'm not sure why we've still got trailers and tankers on the bottom. A little bit of editing. I'll take responsibility for that. But trailers, tankers and truck bodies got amalgamated into the trucks, buses and specialised truck bodies one. So it's now closed. So we might do an edit before we post that out in the future. And that's just gives you a bit of an idea how important fleet is to local buy, and it's important from a council perspective. You know, your use of our contracts will vary between you know, from council to council, but typically, you know, things like trucks and heavy and light plant, they cost a lot. They do last a few years, but there's a lot of money spent there. So more so than even engineering and consultants, which is a bit surprising. The trucks one is a national, with the exception of Western Australia. So all the states are in, which is why you see 224 entities using that. So not only have we got the local governments across the country, but we also have a number of other government agencies that are able to jump on board and save themselves some time and money. So I think, Emma, it might be over to you now.
It sure is. Thank you very much, Shane. We do have a couple of questions which we're going to dive into in a live Q&A in just one moment. However, I did want to talk about a couple of things, Shane, and get your opinion on these also. So, and Shane, you did cover this. I was making some notes, but if there are suppliers in your region that are not currently local buy pre-qualified, we would love to hear from you, wouldn't we, Shane?
Yeah, look, and we get it. I won't say every day, but you know, every week I receive calls from suppliers who have been directed to us from council, or councils who go, hey, I needed XYZ on this arrangement because either they're the only one in town or these are the people who we need. So I know sometimes that it might be a flick, so you don't have to deal with people. Go and join local buy, and then because we only use local buy, I can kind of suss some of those out. I don't want to put people on contracts just because to get numbers. I want people on contracts that council are going to use. Happy to have the conversation both with you as a council and with the suppliers. Probably half my, well, it feels like half my time I spend doing those conversations, and that's cool. It's good engagement. So
yeah. And we love to invite suppliers to tender next time we go out. So Local Buy opens up our tenders once a quarter. We are the only entity out of all the procurement entities in Australia that open our tenders to bring on new suppliers so often. In the other states, sometimes their minds are blown about how we actually make that happen, and it's a huge concerted team effort to do so. But it just means that we can be way more agile. We can bring on those suppliers so you can engage your local businesses through local buy. So thank you, Shane, for covering off on that one. Whilst we're on this event slide, I just wanted to talk about next year. So next year, as I alluded to at the beginning of this webinar, we are turning 25 years of age. Now, any of you that know me know that I am not going to let that slip by without a big celebration. So Local Buy will be holding a conference in Brisbane. It starts with networking drinks on the 4th of August, with a whole day conference on the 5th of August, with a gala party to celebrate on the evening of the 5th of August. Now, I cannot confirm anything in writing, and you didn't necessarily hear this from me, but a little birdie tells me there may be a dedicated fleet stream. So it's time for you to rush out to your managers and ask if you can come along to the Local Buy conference on the 4th and 5th of August in Brisbane next year. We will look to work with our fleet customers from local government across Queensland on topics for that fleet stream, and Shane and I will be putting our heads together early in the new year to start working on that. So it's not official, it's not in writing, but I did want to give you the heads up that it's going to be an excellent opportunity for you to network with peers from across Queensland, to learn some new things, and to celebrate with us Local Buy turning 25. Now, before we move into Q&A, One more thing to say, and I know that this feedback, Shane, has come from suppliers all the time, that sometimes councils get their budgets for replacement assets early in the new financial year, but sometimes for whatever reason, the orders don't start going out or requests for quote to the bodybuilders and the cab chassis builders or manufacturers for quite some time. I just wondered, Shane, if you could touch on that at all for me before we move into Q&A.
Yes, I could touch on it. What would you like me to?
Oh, the suppliers always say we would love the orders earlier because there are
Yeah,
long lead times on body builds. The
yeah,
industry in bodybuilding, Shane, you know, they are so busy. They can't recruit bodybuilders for love nor money. And that's really slowing down the process. And it makes it really hard if orders are coming in later for those assets to be delivered in this financial year.
yeah. Look, one of the big difficulties on both from the buyer's end and the supplier end is about that time. So we've just come through some terrible years with firstly COVID, and then the war in Ukraine, which completely disrupted supply chains, not just at factory level, but at shipping level. That has now caught up. So the days of having to wait 6, 9, 12 months for, in this case, trucks, cab chassis, that has eased off. They're starting to get stock. It depends on the brand. Some of them are struggling with, there's been a few that have been struggling around emissions and not being able to get certain models of vehicles. But be very mindful that most bodybuilders will not begin construction until the cab chassis is sitting in their yard. Now, if you're ordering today and you've missed the cut by one day, that truck may miss the production line in, I'll say, Japan, which means instead of coming out in February, it may not get built till February or March, which means by the time we get to see it, it'll be April, May. It sits in the bodybuilder's yard because it's taken so long to get that. He's got a 6-month lead time, and you're into the new financial year, causing havoc at the buyers and with budgeting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure that most of you don't get to keep that money and drag it into the new financial year. Yes, but you do get to still spend that money, but it comes out of the following year's budget, and somebody else has snapped up that spare money if you haven't been able to find something to spend it on in very quickly. Clearly, going out as early as you can once you know is ideal, but it's never that simple. By the time you process things in council, get approval, put it out, turn it around, and then appoint, is still somewhere between, at the best August, but more likely, October, November, and that's where we start to sit where there's difficulty. The best thing to say is get in early and as quick as you can. With that, things are improving on the supply of cab chassis, but as Emma said, bodybuilders, they can't get people. A lot of them now are building stuff or buying stuff already pre-constructed, fabricated overseas, bringing it in and doing the final construction here, which is very sad because, we're losing skills in the industry. And I think, to be honest, we've got a combination. We've got a youthful market coming through who may not be attracted to working in dirty workshops, or they've been attracted to go off to the mines where they pay them obscene amount of money. Yes, they get a bit dirty, but they get paid obscene amount of money. So there's a shortage, and that's not going to change in the short term.
No. Thanks, Shane. It's almost like a public service announcement telling everyone things they already know, but the suppliers would be very happy for us
a reminder
to
for people. So.
Yeah. So I'm going to lead this slide up on the screen whilst we dive into Q&A now. We do really value your feedback. This year, Local Buy has hosted over 70 webinars and face-to-face events for our customers, and it's really good to hear what you felt we covered well, if there was anything missing, what can we do better to make sure that we're giving you the level of information that you require. So there is a little link down there. This webinar is being recorded, and we will be sending out the resources for this webinar. The marketing team will put them together and make them look pretty and cut out any swear words, and then they will be sent out towards the end of the week. So Shane, get yourself ready for some questions. One of our attendees has asked that she has been advised that Fuso and Hino are no longer separate entities starting from the 1st of April 2026, and will that be reflected in the new contract?
So the situation that's occurring between Fuso and Hino. So Fuso, which many of you might recall is Mitsubishi Fuso, is actually owned by the Daimler Truck and Bus Group, a European company. They have owned it for several years, and a lot of the new technology now is actually Daimler technology. Hino, on the other hand, is wholly owned by the Toyota Motor Company, who we would understand is a very successful car manufacturer. So Toyota and Daimler have a joint venture which they're putting their Fuso and their Hino operations together. At this point in time, the brands will remain separate and sold through their own networks. And as an adjunct to that, you might have noticed also part of the, I'll make sure I've got the right group, part of the Volvo group is UD Trucks. Yeah. Interestingly, UD Trucks used to be Nissan UD, and then Volvo bought into it, and now it's just UD Trucks. But last year, Volvo sold UD Trucks to Isuzu Trucks. However, the distribution of UD Trucks currently remains in the Volvo group, regardless of the parent who owns the parent who manufactures. So the brands, as we see them, will remain the same unless we get notified. If there's a change, that would mean some dramatic changes. The word from both companies that they've told me is that everything will proceed as normal.
Thank you, Shane. And if anything does change, we will make sure that we're communicating those changes with you. It's really important for us if suppliers do have business entity changes, ABN changes, name changes, that they inform us straight away so we can make sure that we are contractually engaged with the correct entity, which, as you can tell from Shane's explanation, is not that simple. So thank you very much, Shane. Mark has asked a question in relation to heavy and light plant machinery. Some of the suppliers don't have regional representatives or subcontractors listed. Now, I'm assuming that Mark means within vendor panel in terms of adding colleagues. So how do they engage those subcontractors to make sure that they're engaging through a local buy contract, Shane?
Okay, so in that area, each company takes a different approach to the market. So I'll use Caterpillar as a brand. Caterpillar as a brand do not sell direct. They sell through their authorised distributor in each state. In the case of Queensland, they sell through Hastings Deering, who are their authorised agent. And they have, as most people know, they have branches right across the state and Northern Territory. But they don't sell anywhere else in the country. Other companies have the distribution rights there. Then you've got an example like Komatsu. That's a company owned, and everything is Komatsu Australia. They don't have, once again, they don't have distributors or dealers. So it's always, just as Hastings is always through the single point, Komatsu is always through the single point. When we get into some of the light plant and some of the smaller brands, it changes a bit. So there are attracted people like Agco, who do brands like Massey Ferguson and Fendt and Ozeki, and they sell through a tractor dealer network. And that works quite well because they don't have a massive sales force themselves, so they use an existing dealer network who may also carry other brands, not necessarily direct competition, but other brands of machinery. Then you get people like Kubota. Kubota have numerous dealers, but everything goes through the Kubota head office. So they certainly work with their dealers when a quotation goes out, but everything comes out of their head office. John Deere, so we deal with John Deere Limited, who are the tractor and mower people for John Deere, and they distribute through a dealer network. They just push it straight out to their dealers to deal direct with the council. Now, in Queensland, that's essentially, in most places, is RDO equipment. We also have honeycombs up there in the north and far north, but nobody deals direct with John Deere. They're dealing with their authorised dealers in those points.
Thanks, Shane. I think
I'm gonna throw a curveball in here because this is one that kills people a bit. So RDO equipment are also a John Deere, or the John Deere construction and forestry equipment distributor. Nothing to do with John Deere Limited, who do the tractors and mowers. So, and they now operate in Queensland, New South Wales and Northern Territory. So there can be some confusion. And of course, RDO have a number of brands apart from John Deere, but also the Vermeer product, which is quite popular in that, tree chipping game.
so. The rule of thumb is if you would like to engage someone and you can't find them in vendor panel because they're sitting under a dealer, and you think or believe that they are, or you have a specific manufacturer that you can't find a dealer for, you have a couple of options. You can, if you would like to, reach directly out to Shane. As you can tell, he is a complete wealth of knowledge about who's sitting where and the best ways to engage those particular fleet suppliers, whether it's through the head office or it needs to go through a dealer. Or you can reach out to your engagement manager. That would be me for the North Queensland region, Jeremy for Southern Queensland and Western Queensland, Audrey up north, and Liz, who looks after our Southeast Queensland councils. You should know who your engagement manager is in council, but if you do have any questions or queries, we are here to help and we really don't mind you reaching out. Isn't that right, Shane?
Yeah, and look, one of the things that has become apparent, and it's not just for the heavy and light, but it's also a truck thing, is we almost need to have a simple ready reckoner, which won't be simple, but we need something that you can click on and go, oh, I'm in Ipswich and I wish to engage, who are my tractor people? And then you'll be able to, like I said, it's not going to be an easy one to do, but let's find an easy, click on there, who are the tractor dealers? And it could be that you're dealing directly with Kubota or RDO, or you could be dealing with Ipswich tractor suppliers, so who are an authorised distributor for another brand. And we kind of need to do something similar with trucks, but it's just as complicated because not only do we have regional issues and dealers, but categories can be quite complex in that area. So
we'll put our heads together, Shane.
Yeah, I think Isabel put her hand up to do something.
Yeah, I was about to say it feels like an Isabel job.
Yeah.
Couple of last questions. Malcolm has said the new cloud version of Tech One will be able to do service scheduling.
Well, that'd be interesting. I don't know whether the Tech One and what Auto Guru talk to each other. And it's probably, it's a bit more than just the scheduling. So what is sitting in that digitized area is the next step. So it's not just the scheduling, it's about contacting the appropriate user of that vehicle or asset and getting that sorted. We still have that human factor that people just forget and don't turn up. A bit like forgetting to turn up to work on Monday morning. Some people are good at it, they always forget, and other people are always spot on. So
thanks, Shane. Peter Bradford asked if NASCO is in a pre-qualified supplier for auctions.
I need to double check on that, Peter. They have been in the past, and I'm just going, if I just keep talking quietly.
I had a wee look and I couldn't see, but Peter, we'll take that one offline and let you know.
Yeah.
If not, we'll encourage them to come on next time we open that particular arrangement.
Chris is one of our early adopters, so but he's had a few changes in staff, and I think some changes with ownership structure, because he was with Ray White for a little while. So yeah, we'll reach out and let you know where they're at.
Wonderful. And that seems to be the end of our questions. And Shane, we've come in right on time. We had our webinar booked for 1 hour, and we're going to give everybody a few moments of their day back. But please do reach out if you have any questions or queries in the meantime. Get that date in your diary, the 4th and 5th of August 2026 for the Local Buy Conference. And we will be sharing the resources, the recording and the slides for this webinar this afternoon with everybody, probably by the end of the week. If you have any questions, please reach out to Shane or myself. I'd like to thank Shane, my esteemed colleague. He'll get some more texts laughing at that one. And Catherine and Isabel for joining us this afternoon. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of Tuesday. Thank you for joining us. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Emma. Thank you all.